Hi, everyone. This is Michelle Gramoglia, the President and CEO here at Woodland Pond, and this is my weekly address for Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, and thank you to all of you that corrected me from last week when I accidentally said June 1st. But yes, today is July 8th, 2025. I've got a good amount of items to go over today, some updates, some news and notables, some calendar items and so forth, but I am going to start just with a reiteration of the emergency alert that we sent out yesterday around 4:30 p.m. or so. Hopefully you've all received that. If you have not received that, that would have gone to a cell phone, your landline, or email, and that could go to any resident or loved one. Please do call our concierge and let them know that you did not get that, because we'll check our emergency alert system to make sure that you are added and all of your contact information is included. This one was in particular related to inclement weather and hazardous weather warnings that were issued by the National Weather Service yesterday. And this is a little unusual because they actually sort of looked out for the entire week, all the way through Sunday, and put out a variety of different alerts related to the potential for torrential downpours, flash flooding, severe thunderstorms, and heat. So summer at its finest, but it's really important that we are aware of the potential weather that can be coming, and that you are aware of that. As always, we want you to think about what you would need to do in the event of a power outage. We've had some great opportunities over the last couple of months to drill on power outages, particularly in the health center. The team is well suited and knows exactly what to do to jump into action if and when we have a power outage and we go on to generator power. In independent living, we do remind you that it's a great idea to make sure your cell phones are charged, you have a battery-powered light source that is charged, and that you have notified us if you have any condition that requires electricity for life-saving means. You hear me say this all the time. That would be like a CPAP machine, a BiPAP, an oxygen concentrator, and also to let us know if in the event of an evacuation for any reason, if you would need to do stairs to get out of the building, please, and you can't do stairs to get out of the building, please let concierge know as soon as possible. In the health center, we manage and keep records on all of that, so you don't need to worry about that if you reside in the health center. We do drill on that as well, so we try to keep safety at the front of mind. I'll go really quickly through calendar items because I want to get to some of the meat of the discussion today. Today at 1 p.m., the Brain Health team is going to be offering its next educational program, which is called Supporting Independence. And this is going to be presented by Tara DeLuca, who is the Senior Manager for Program Support and Community Partnership with the Hudson Valley Alzheimer's Association. Today at 2:30 in the PAC, the Lyra Music Young Artists Program classical recital, which will feature pre-college string players and pianists, will be here performing classical solo and chamber music. Tomorrow, Wednesday at 11 a.m. in the game room, Claire Wade, who is a vision rehab therapist with the Commission for the Blind, will be leading a question and answer session on macular degeneration. And you do not need to have a macular degeneration diagnosis to attend this educational question and answer session. This is a vision condition that we see with a decent amount of prevalence here at the community, and it has a really unique impact, and not unique in a good way, unfortunately, on what will happen as the condition progresses. And so great opportunity to learn more about macular degeneration. Friday at 2 p.m. in the classroom, the Benefit Fund and representatives from the Reward Our Valued Employees Committee, or ROVE, will be hosting an information social. This is really geared towards maybe newer residents or residents that are not super familiar on the differences between each of these different giving opportunities, They will also be talking about the endowment fund. Each of these is completely different. They each have different drivers and different purposes. They can be very confusing. It may seem duplicative if you don't know about what they're for. So they're going to be hosting an information session on that on Friday at 2 p.m. Saturday at 11 a.m. in the classroom, there will be a Tibetan sound bath meditative experience, and this is limited seating. This is a really awesome opportunity. If you have not done a Tibetan sound bath meditation before, I would strongly encourage it. These are opportunities that can allow you to help feel more grounded and techniques that you can use in your personal life, and we're thrilled to be able to offer that. And Saturday at 2 p.m. in the classroom, Norman Sosowski, who resides here at the community, will be reading 6 of his most recent poems and would like to engage the audience in discussion about those poems. So please do join Norman on Saturday at 2 p.m. in the classroom for that. Let's see, a couple of really important thank yous. We have had a great bit of collaboration on some issues over the last couple of weeks with different groups of residents in a way that doesn't always come up. And it feels really reassuring and community building when we're able to do these kinds of things. The first is a working group that I'm going to informally refer to as the Improving Relations and Expectations working group. And what this is being driven by is, we have family council meetings for the health center every quarter. We do resident satisfaction surveys, family satisfaction surveys, individualized service plan meetings, care plan meetings. There's lots of different ways to get feedback from residents and families in the health center. One of the things that has come up is there's a good deal of frustration at times from families, and it seems evident to us that in certain cases, expectations are not being met by, in particular, family members. Residents seem to be a somewhat more on point about what they can expect and how we provide care and so forth, and things like that. And right now, there's been sort of an uptick in the concerning interactions with certain guests of our residents, primarily guests, loved ones, and how certain interactions, not all, not by any means, are starting to be at a concerning level of, I would say, angst, and in a way that we need to all sort of look in a mirror and say, what can we do to kind of bring the temperature down on some of these discussions? So in recognizing that just societally right now, and this was something we discussed in our kickoff meeting last week, tensions are running higher than they usually do, and that's manifesting itself out in the community. People are not necessarily as gracious to one another. It's kind of a sad turn of events. We don't want to see that become a really pervasive problem here at Woodland Pond. And in the health center in particular, generally as a resident ages, we tend to be dealing more with the loved one. So what we want to do with this working group is identify opportunities for enhanced information sharing and orientation for both residents and families well before their loved one needs to go into the health center. Because oftentimes what we're seeing is the tension that's happening is happening because someone might have an expectation that, for example, in skilled nursing, there's a doctor present all the time, and this is someone that should be available for impromptu meetings, family check-ins, etc. And that's an easy expectation or even a myth to bust, because that's not how nursing homes work. But if you've never dealt with a nursing home or you've never experienced a skilled nursing level of care, it's reasonable to understand that you may think that that would be the case. That is something very easy for us to provide advanced expectations on, advanced orientation, so that when that level of interaction with a doctor, for example, is not happening, you understand why before you're ever even in the health center. You know that you're going to be dealing primarily with the nursing staff, the social services staff, and the therapy staff. And so it's really identifying opportunities where we can enhance the communication about how the health center works in every level of care, communicating that with residents and especially their families and loved ones in advance, and giving opportunities for questions to be asked and different things. So we did have a kickoff meeting last week, and in that meeting were the members of the Woodland Pond Health Center Committee. Those are all residents, and also the Woodland Pond Mental Health and Wellness. I'm not sure if it was the task force or the committee. Again, all residents, and then the leadership team of our interdisciplinary team, which is the team that oversees the care for residents in the health center and transitions into the health center from independent living. And we talked for quite a while, over an hour actually, about some of the experiences that our staff have come to us, sometimes in tears, about the way that an interaction with either a resident or a family member has just gone. And it was, I think, eye-opening for the residents to hear some of those experiences and what staff are encountering, not every day, and certainly not with every family, but recognizing that this is something that we collectively never want to see. We don't want to see staff in tears. So what can we do as a team, working collaboratively, Woodland Pond residents working together to enhance this communication? We already immediately came up with some really fantastic, I would say, low-hanging fruit kind of ideas. And since the meeting last Wednesday, several of these things have already started in motion, and we will be meeting again in August. One thing that did come out of that, and I will say it now and then we'll reiterate it, is we kind of went around the room and asked the question, how many residents in the room, how many of your loved ones, your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, whoever's going to be helping you as you age from your personal life, how many of them have read your residence and care agreement with Woodland Pond? And the answer was very few. And that's a great place to start, because that residence and care agreement is the actual document that says, here's what Woodland Pond is providing to this resident. Here is what I, as the resident, have opted into. This is what I want to do. This is what Woodland Pond is going to provide to me. Really, really important for the families to understand that. And it's best to do that well before somebody needs to go into the health center so that questions can be answered. So we talked about that. And we also talked about each member of the interdisciplinary team filming a short vignette explaining about their role, what they do, things that you can expect when you interact with those individuals when you're in the health center, and we would parse it by level of care, and then kind of combining those and making them available on our YouTube channel. We talked about opportunities for making some real headway with private duty companions, who often act as a go-between between families and Woodland Pond. And sometimes the communication it's sort of like the game of telephone. The more people you have on that chain making that communication, things can get a little bit gray. So we've made some fantastic outreach with some of the primary private duty aides in the health center, let them know kind of what we're trying to accomplish, trying to get people on board with this. So we're very excited about this, and I just want to thank everyone that's going to collaborate with us on that. The next, I'd like to thank the Financial Review Committee of the Residents Council for assisting us in proofreading and providing feedback on a survey that you will all be getting shortly after my address today. This survey surrounds the ongoing consideration of Woodland Pond opening up a capital campaign to finance or fund the new Performing Arts Center. that is currently contemplated for a construction start in 2028 through bond financing. We have been looking at different alternatives, alternative funding sources, and a capital campaign is at the top of the list. We have not made a decision. We are very close to making a decision on whether or not we're going to proceed with this. So we provided a draft of that survey to the Finance Review Committee yesterday. We've gotten a very good feedback on it, and you will all be receiving a link to that survey. These are completely anonymous, and those that do not use the computer, you will receive a paper copy. And we're asking if you can please do everything that you can to try to respond to this survey. You're going to see when you read these that this is really helping us to take the temperature at the community as to whether or not a capital campaign could be viable in a way that's completely confidential and also non-committal. It's really the best way for us to get this information to decide if this thing will have legs. And I'm really asking if everyone can take the time. It probably will take 5 or 6 minutes for you to fill it out. You can fill it out, a paper copy at and drop it to concierge. Again, these are anonymous, and we really appreciate your help on that. And thank you very much to the Finance Review Committee for providing feedback on that. Let's see. Let's go into rumor mill items. Well, actually, before we go into rumor mill items, I would like to announce that the long-awaited trail safety signs have arrived and are being placed in the ground today. So at the head of both the Branch and McBride trails now, you will see our safety recommendations and sort of in that typical Woodland Pond sign format. They're really lovely signs. I think that they do a great job of outlining the primary safety concerns. Obviously, you're outside, this is a trail, you're using it at your own risk, but there are certain things that we hope that people will keep in mind, and those trailhead signs for safety are going up today. Okay, let's see, going into rumor mill. The first, I've already thanked the person that sent me the email on this last week. And the reason that I thanked this person for asking me this question is because this is the exact kind of thing that without verification could hit the Woodland Pond grapevine like a fire and just go wild. And this person realized that. This person has significant experience in the world of medicine and caregiving and understands the topic that I'm going to mention in a second, and enough to know that there's complications and really just to kind of get to the bottom of this rather than listening to rumor. And the question was, with the changes that are coming in the one big beautiful bill, which has a lot of components to it, what will the impact of the changes to Medicaid have on Woodland Pond? And I was really pleased to have the opportunity to explain that to this person. And again, I want to thank you so much for asking me rather than, listening to whatever, the buzz is in the dining room. So it's really important. I am not going to be the educator on the contents of the big, beautiful bill. It's too vast for me to be able to do that, but I will, I know that you've heard me say this before, I will implore you to try and find information sources on all sides of this issue. There's a lot of rhetoric out there on both sides about what the bill is going to do, what it's going to accomplish, what it's going to cut. A lot of what you're hearing is slanted. And when you really get down to the brass tacks of what the bill does, it's a lot different than what you may be hearing in the press. There's a lot of comment about the fact that Medicaid is going to be cut, and obviously that can provide fear to those people that are affected by that. I want to make it clear that your health insurance benefits that you get are coming from Medicare. I think everyone probably knows that that's watching this, but it's really important to make a distinction between Medicare and Medicaid. Medicaid is different levels of health insurance and other types of insurance. for those that are indigent or meet certain affordability requirements. And here at Woodland Pond, most residents that are here, unless they're a direct admit into skilled nursing, have come through independent living, and that requires a certain level of financial stability. So therefore, you would not be Medicaid eligible in most cases if you've come from independent living and are a contract holder. That being said, in New York State, we are required to consider 1 in every 4 long-term admissions into skilled nursing only to come off of our Medicaid waiting list. And so those would be people from the outside that are already enrolled in Medicaid. They are in need of nursing home care. We do have to require assess 1 in 4 long-term admissions to be a potential Medicaid recipient that we're bringing into skilled nursing. That's a requirement under our regulations. That means that at any given time, we maybe have 4 or 5 people in total out of 365 plus residents on Medicaid. And the changes that are proposed in the One Big Beautiful Bill would not impact these residents. These residents, their eligibility for Medicaid is not going to change by virtue of this bill. So they're related to this bill, there will not be any impacts for our very, very small Medicaid population. That being said, because we enroll, or because we participate in Medicare and Medicaid and have for 15 years, there are always cuts to these programs. And that is one of the messages that is definitely being lost in the clickbait and in the media. There are countless times over the last 15 years that we have been notified that our rates are going down, Medicaid is being cut, Medicare is being revised and cut. This is part of doing business when you're a Medicare and Medicaid participating provider. There have been countless times where we've received a notification several years after we've cared for someone on Medicare or Medicaid in skilled nursing, and we've already received payment from Medicare or Medicaid, and they say, oh, no, we're going to take some of that back. And it'll be some obscure aspect of a bill that's been passed. It used to be called pork barrel spending. There are changes basically every year. And when you're not in this world where you're the provider, you wouldn't necessarily know that. And that's certainly not the kind of news that the papers and so forth are going to pick up, because it's not a sexy headline. So we are accustomed to changes in Medicare and Medicaid, and we always roll with it. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, again, it's really the cost of doing business with Medicare and Medicaid, and providers are really, at least at Woodland Pond, we're very much used to this. The next rumor mill item is, I can't eat all my portions. Can we please have a small option? I don't care about the price, it's the waste. Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It is always been a concern of mine, especially from a sustainability perspective, to really kind of understand how many things are leaving the dining room as a leftover and then going and sitting in someone's refrigerator for a day or 2 or 3, and then ending up in the garbage. Because we understand that you don't want to leave things on the table. And we really don't know how much of that actually, gets consumed when you bring it home. A lot of these things aren't great as leftovers. So I think this is a great opportunity to align portion sizes, and the dining committee is strongly encouraged to take this up. I will be passing this along, of course, to Phil and Jared, who prepare the menus and make those determinations. But we hear pretty often, this portion of this is too small, but this portion of this is too big. Can we find sort of that Goldilocks perfect medium? And I really appreciate the comment. The next is, please, a second request for you to consider having a nurse on during weekends. So this is specifically related to independent living, because we do have 24/7 nurse staffing in every level of care of the health center. And it says, remember, we pay to be here well enough to afford a nurse. It's important safeguard for all IL residents. Gratefully, if you can consider. And then there's a heart, and it says, you do a great job here, exclamation point. And I appreciate that. Our team does do a fantastic job, although we are not perfect. This comes up periodically. We historically never had a weekend nurse in independent living until COVID. And then that was something that, like the resident technology assistant that also did not predate COVID, was determined as being appropriate for that time. And then as we really started to evaluate, once the pandemic died down and we really started looking at what and how busy is this nurse in independent living on the weekends, we actually did a review of this, a formal review with the Residents Council, presented the data about a year ago. There are an extraordinarily low number of PERS buttons in independent living in general, and the weekend is no different. When we did this analysis, I think we looked at it for 30 or 60 days. And in a total week, I think the average number of PERS buttons that our wellness nurses were responding to was 7 in an entire week in independent living. So it's not high volume. And it concerns us when we see somebody in independent living that is feeling like they maybe think that the safety net of having that nurse there would be something that is something that you need. So I would ask whoever wrote this to please consider where you think that the request is coming from. We know that there's not an emergency response need, because in the rare instance that we have a PERS on the weekend, when we do have a PERS, I would say at least 90% of them in independent living are false alarms. And so if you have a couple a week that are legitimate, that's a lot. And any of our staff that are here will and can contact the rescue squad, which is right across the street. So there's, without a doubt, we have the ability to bring emergency response to you as soon as we know that you need it. So I think we need to explore a little bit more about, what are you looking for from weekend staff? Because we just don't have the volume of nursing needs per se. So let's explore that a little bit more. And if you are listening and you wrote that, if you could think and let me know in another anonymous rumor mill or suggestion why you think that would be beneficial, we can explore that a little more to see if we can accomplish what you're looking for with existing staff or a reassignment of duties. We have a request in the suggestion box to respectfully remind residents about the need to keep dogs, and in this case, this person is specifically referring to large dogs, on tight leashes, and do everything in your power to not allow your dogs to bump into people and jump. I am a very large dog owner and a very small dog owner, and they both come with their opportunities and their challenges, pros and cons. Some of the bigger dogs, certainly, obviously, they create a bigger impact hazard because they're bigger dogs. And we have seen, over the years, we've seen waves of people coming with smaller dogs than bigger dogs. Right now, we've seen a little bit more of a propensity for people, new residents coming with larger dogs. So I can certainly understand the concerns, but the concern really applies to all dogs. So dogs should be kept on a very short leash. They should not be on retractable leashes. And if your dog is one that is prone to jump, whether it's a small dog or a big dog, we equally do not condone any dogs jumping. So do come to us if you're having challenges assimilating your dog into life at the community here. There is no perfect answer. But we are pet friendly and we want to work with you to come up with solutions. I actually was chatting with a resident today that recently moved in with a dog. And it occurred to me that as much vetting as we do of residents before they come into independent living, we don't even seek a profile on how your dog is and acts. And I think that would be a helpful tool. so that we can kind of understand what you might encounter when you come with your dog, and then help you kind of figure out some strategies to make sure that the assimilation for the dog is as successful as possible. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, a couple of people yesterday sent me a link to an article that was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that was highlighting not only the Amsterdam CCRC on Long Island closing, but kind of looking at historical data on the rare instances, and as many of the commenters on the article pointed out, less than 1% of CCRCs filing bankruptcy over the last, I think it's 10 years or something in the article. Wanted me to be aware of it. And I did take the time to read not only the article through a couple of times, but also the nearly 700 comments. I spent about an hour and a half this morning reading through all the comments. And it's very interesting to kind of see how folks from the outside world that are not familiar with CCRCs and how the financial disclosure works and the transparency requirements. There's sort of this assumption that, you're not going to know anything about the finances. And it's obviously quite the contrary. I'm sure you all remember that when you became a contract holder, there was a copious amount of financial information provided to you in the disclosure statement, ample opportunity to ask us lots of questions. Our residency care agreement says right on the front cover, we strongly recommend that you have an attorney or a financial advisor review this. Obviously, we can make lots of distinctions between Woodland Pond, which is 100% fully occupied in independent living, and each and every one of these communities that has filed bankruptcy, which all attribute their failures to low occupancy. Very, very different situation at Woodland Pond. But I think if you're going to read the article, take a spin through some of those comments, and let's talk a little bit more about this. We always want to share information, especially when there are concerns like this. We completely understand and empathize with the fact that this is concerning, but there are significant distinctions between those communities that are thriving, like Woodland Pond, and those that have had to file bankruptcy. One of the things that article did not do a great job of is identifying of the 16 that have had to file bankruptcy, which actually closed their doors, and where residents actually lost their home or access to services. And I personally don't know the answer to that question. My understanding was that the Amsterdam's revision from being a CCRC into a rental community, where certain folks in higher levels of care had to move to different places, was very unique, but I'm not really sure. And the article didn't go into details about how each of those bankruptcy filings sort of got worked out. As we know, you can go into Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, as the Amsterdam did twice successfully prior to the final. And in both of those cases, they were able to have their financial backers, which are the bondholders, help them to find more solid footing. So that happened twice in two separate bankruptcy filings. So again, I don't know of the 16 that are referenced, how many found themselves in that situation and were able to successfully restructure their finances. It is a little bit hard to tell, but I do appreciate you sending the article. I also, I try to read the journal on all applicable issues. Same thing with the New York Times. Lots of you send me articles from there, and I do appreciate it. I try to get to them as soon as you send them to me or the same day. So do keep that information coming, and let's just keep the dialogue going on this stuff. That's all that I have. I know it's a lot. I will see you all next Tuesday.